at the topic, the role of effective parenting in drug abuse prevention. The role of effective parenting in drug abuse prevention. And today's program promises to be interesting. We sincerely do apologize that we're starting off a little bit late, but we promise to address all the issues as regards to this particular topic today. The role of effective parenting in drug abuse prevention. My name is Lillian, and as always, we have Busa Osowo right here with us in the studio. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, thank you, and welcome to our listeners.
Okay, we also have Reverend Levi Chukwuneye. Good evening, sir, and you are welcome.
Good evening, listeners. Good evening, Better Picking. Good to be here again.
Okay, and good to have you. Of course, it's going to be an interactive session, so get your questions ready. You can send your questions across to us early. Send it to 0705 079 109. 0705 079 109. You can send a question also via WhatsApp 0705 079 109. So we'll start off with the regular, which is Busa Osowo. Is there a relationship between, but before we get to this, let's do a recap of what we did last week for benefit of those who haven't followed this program since we started off I think 2 months ago or thereabouts. So for benefit of them, let's just do a recap, a brief of what this program is about, and of course what we did last week.
Okay, thank you again to everyone who has tuned in. This is the Truth About Drug Abuse radio program, and our sole aim in this program is to bring to the fore both accurate and relevant information regarding drug abuse. And so from when we started, we looked about the overview of the drug abuse situation in Nigeria, to the fact that we saw that there were about 17.6 million Nigerians who are abusing drugs. We also saw that the most commonly abused drugs in Nigeria is marijuana. Then from there we moved on to also look at the factors that are responsible for drug abuse, especially among young people. We also looked at the myth or the lies that drug peddlers spread around drug abuse. We saw that one of those lies is that drug peddlers lie that drug is for fun. Some people lie that they take it just to help them sharpen their memory. The other lie is that it helps them deal with their problems. But we have seen on this platform over and over again that these are just lies that cannot be substantiated. There is no drug on earth that you can abuse that will make your life meaningful. And so on the last episode, we looked at school-based education for drug abuse prevention, because we have seen in the number of years that we have been on the field that if we get parents and teachers involved in drug abuse prevention, then there's a possibility that we'll be able to achieve great success in this fight. And so what we talked about last episode is to call on the attention of school teachers and school owners, also the government, to see it as a thing that needs to be done. As a matter of fact, we emphasize that it is high time that the government consider the issue of drug abuse as a public health concern, so that every effort needed can be put together to ensure that our young people are not destroyed by drug abuse.
All right, thank you so much for that wonderful recap, and we'll head straight to our topic for today. We did say that it is the role of effective parenting in drug abuse prevention, and I will certainly start off with you, Mr. Busa Osowo. First, we've actually been hammering on drug abuse for quite some time now, and I think from the last episode that we had, we've noticed that a lot of people are now in agreement with us that we all hands needs to be on deck in ensuring that we let our children know, the youth know, that drug abuse is actually a problem, and it could affect not only your system, it could affect everything about you. The way society will even perceive you is something again. Now, is there a relationship, as regards to today's topic, is there a relationship between parenting and substance among young people? Is there any link between the two?
Yes, there is a great link between parenting and drug abuse prevention. And this is why I say so. The family is the strongest unit of the society. It is from the family that children are born into, and they are expected to get their perception of life, their values, the definition of what is right or what is wrong. When it comes to drug abuse, there are surveys that have been conducted globally that shows that there is a way that parenting can be done that would either help a child to be able to stay away from drug abuse or push that child to begin to experiment with drug abuse. Surveys globally has also supported the fact that children who have absent fathers and indulging mothers have difficulties in recovering from drug abuse. Now, what this means is that if a child is born into a family that the father is not available and that child begins to experiment with drug abuse, if he is brought into a system where he needs to recover, research have shown that if the father is not fully involved in that process, that it is going to be difficult for that child to recover. We also see that from the beginning of this program, we have emphasized that one of the root factors that pushes young people to begin to abuse drugs is family problem. And so if a child comes from a home, a young person comes from a home where there is crisis between the father and the mother, or from a divorced home, then that young person's chances of involving himself or herself in drug abuse is increased. And so that is the relationship that exists. And we want every parent listening to us today to come to this understanding that whatever happens at home does not only affect you, but also affects what your child becomes.
Okay, so as a parent, and this question will be, this question is strictly for Reverend Levi Chukunaya. As a parent and also as a counselor, I know you have had to interact with both adolescents and their parents. What has been your experience so far, and would you say that parents are doing their best when it comes to parenting? Because I remember back then we've had this discussion over and over again, and there's this even within the children themselves, they tend to say that the way their parents were trained, from the things they've heard their parents say, is not actually the same. I don't know whether you've had such kind of issues during in the course of you interacting with parents, and as well interacting with the youth themselves. So have you had such?
Of course I have done, because one of the things I want to quickly say is that there's a difference between the information that the children hold and the ones the parents have. You know, the age time between the parent and the children are not the same. So the prevalent psychology or phenomenon that both of them met in society and adopted as their own personal opinion are not the same. So for instance, a parent typically believes that every child should know that drug is bad. That is what majority of the parents today will assume. But the children of today are told or are given impression that drug is a way of measuring up with the society expectation and peer group pressure. I don't know if you're getting me. So for a young boy who doesn't smoke, for instance, the society gives them the impression that you're not matured enough, you're not among the big boys or the happening guys. So you see, there is a difference between the information the children have and the information their parent has. So I don't know whether that is sufficient for the question you asked. Another thing I've also noticed is that parents are not aware of the challenges that has cropped up as a result of changes in society. For instance, I remember growing up as a child, I never had access to social media. The first time I ever thought about internet was when I wanted to do, I think, what program was I trying to do? You know, it wasn't prevalent. But today, in fact, before I left the house, my son was using my wife's phone to follow a match update. So now, parents are not aware that, you know, information is readily available. So the extent and the kind of information children have access to has made parenting more challenging and more dynamic. I don't know if you get my point. So it is not the typical way of, you know, parenting of in the time past, the 80s, the 90s, that you can use now, because when our parents leave the home, they can be sure that we are safe at home. But today, in your very own, your children can have access to things you never had access to in your own time. So these are the things I think I've met in my time as a counselor, as a minister, as a,
Okay.
people who work among young people.
All right. Now, coming back to Busosawa, because I know you've. I don't know if you've had such an experience. Too, if you've actually, if your experience dealing with youth and parents is similar to that of Reverend Levi, because you are a drug abuse expert. You talk about it all the time. You go to schools. The few weeks you've been here, you've talked about your outreach and all that. And I know in doing these outreaches, you've actually had encounter with the youth themselves. These are adolescents, and of course, you've spoken to one or two parents in the course of this journey. Would you do you share the same experience, the same thoughts with Reverend Levi?
Yes, I would agree with his experience. Now, one thing that has clearly stood out for me as a drug abuse prevention advocate in the years that we have done what we are doing is the fact that I have noticed that there is a knowledge gap between parents and their children. And because of this knowledge gap, when young people or when children are faced with difficulties, their parents are unable to help them. Not because they don't want to, but because they don't have at their disposal the accurate amount of information to be able to lead conversations with their children. And so that is one experience. Now, the second thing is that I've also discovered that parents underestimate the influence that the media has on their children. As a matter of fact, I have seen that children and even young people learn faster from the songs that they listen to, the movies that they watch, and the books that they read, than the things that their parents will always be shouting at them about. Unless parents learn to get into the world of their children, unless adults learn to get into the world of young people, it will be difficult for you to be able to advise them. It will be difficult for you to be able to understand them. We have seen that there are signs that shows that a young person is beginning to experiment with drugs. But when these things happen, because some parents don't know about these signs, they don't even know about the peculiarities involved in drug abuse. For instance, how many parents know that the reason why your Maggi cube in the kitchen may be shorting is not because somebody else is using it. It's not because the producers have begun to short the cubes. It's because it is possible that your child is abusing Maggi cubes alongside Lakasara. How many parents are aware of this information? So this is a call for parents to match up to the amount of information that their children are having, so that they will be able to lead essential conversations with them.
So in that case, it means the parents can even be the ones supplying the children the substance they use to engage in drug abuse.
Unknowingly.
Because an average parent wants to buy Maggi. An average parent wants to,
Let's not,
Yes,
let's not,
true.
Yes, let's not sell
Seasoning cubes,
product.
yes. Thank you for that.
Okay, so my next question, you've actually answered part of it, so I'll move over to Reverend Levi. In our society today, we know it is common to see that when a child is bad, the blame goes to the mother. You hear that all the time. Oh, now you're picking. Go and take care of your picking. It's even our family, in a typical Nigerian family, you hear that all the time. Even on the road, you hear where fathers are shouting, and the next thing they say, no, be your son. You say, no, now your son. Oh yeah, you are the mother. Take care of that child. Okay? And the question now is parenting specifically the duty of the mother, or is it for both parents? So that our fathers at home now would understand. So when next that child does anything bad, you will say, okay, now we, both of us need to take care of this child. We need to treat this child. We need to deal with this child.
The role of a father in a family is not just spiritual, it is administrative. And I'm trying to look for words to qualify. What I mean by that is this. The father in the family being the head is not supposed to exhibit or play the role of headship in one aspect of the family. Now, you agree with me that when you come to the family, child upbringing or parenting is one of the critical responsibility that the family plays. Like when he was trying to introduce a kind of a recap, you heard what he said about family and all that. That when you have a rehabilitation of a drug victim, that it's difficult for you to achieve quicker and better results without the role of the father. Why is it that way? Now, another thing I must say is this, for we African, that far back, the belief is that the woman takes care of the home, that the role of the man is to go and get what the family will eat, all right? So at the end of the day, fathers in Africa over time has mistakenly shifted the issue of watching the home, supervising the affairs of the home to the children, to the mother precisely, sorry. Now, I was speaking with a friend, and I told him, I said, you must understand that your position as a father doesn't only give you the privilege to give others. In fact, I've realized that the father figure in the family naturally commands some level of respect, even from the children. Now, in a situation whereby the mother says something, the father says the same thing, I've realized that unconsciously the children tends to take the father more serious. So if that is the picture, you will agree with me that it will be a very big mistake to assume that the role of parenting or child upbringing is predominantly for mothers. I want to correct that impression today and say to every father listening to me that when it comes to the job of modeling and bringing up our children, the father should take the front seat. The father has more job to do. In fact, God, the society, and myself, I expect the father to be the one to undertake that responsibility. And they should do it as one of the things they are meant to do in their lifetime. What I mean by that, they should be active, not just passive. It's not something you do only when you come back or when you are... and these issues are also interwoven. Because again, the issue of being absent is not necessarily caused by divorce. Sometimes because of transfer, you see family living apart. And the masculine nature of the man kind of sends some kind of fear to the children. Because when the man stands up alone, it's like the lion has arisen. I'm not saying that father should be a dread to their children, but I want them to know that they have been equipped to play that role. The woman is there to help, to supplement, and not necessarily to play the primary role.
Alright, if you just tuned in, this is The Truth About Drug Abuse radio program on Solid 100.9 FM, and we're looking at the topic, the role of effective parenting in drug abuse prevention. If you have questions, of course, head over to our WhatsApp line 0705 079 1009 0705 079 109. What then would you say, what do you think parents need to do to get more involved in the lives of their children in the midst of these so many things that are calling for their attention? You have work, you have the fact that most of them are religious, they have to be in church all the time, so some don't even have time to look at their children, to even ask questions as regards to what's happening in their children's lives. So what do you think parents need to do to actually get involved?
Okay, let me start by making reference to the Bible. Of course, I'm a preacher, I'm a teacher of the word, so it's one of the source of my knowledge and inspiration. Now, if you read the book of Proverbs, Solomon will say, when I was a child, my father said to me. You see that recurrent in the scripture. And let me also say this, that when you read the Bible, you see that most of the time when God wants to talk about the parenting of children, the upbringing of children, the instructions that children receive in the family, he will always mention the fathers. It doesn't mean that he's not aware that the mothers are not there. Of course, it's God that brought the woman to the man, but it's because he knows this, they have been better equipped. Now, what parents could do more to achieve the role of parenting is to first of all become more conscious of the need of parenting. I'm saying that slowly so that everyone could hear me, and I pray it sinks. As a minister that work among young people, one of the things I've discovered in my course of working with them is that a lot of parents are no longer taking the subject of parenting as one of the important things the family offer to the children and to the society. You know, when people cry about insecurity in Nigeria, for instance, they always will mention the security agencies, isn't it? Now, we must know that whenever we talk about parenting and whenever we talk about the value system in the society, the first place we must take our cry to is the family. And when we come to the family, the first person we need to address is the father. I give you some instances why I think the parenting is no longer being given attention. Today, you see parents, in making choice of the school they send their children, they are considering where they will be trained. That is relinquishing their role to the schools. You will see fathers sending their wards to religious meeting as excusing themselves from the job they are supposed to do. But you see, there is something about parenting. It is not just about the word you speak, it's about the bond you share with the children. It's about the fact that before these children began to meet any other person in society, you are the first person they came in contact with. You are the first person they have shared a close bond with. You are the first person that has made unimaginable impression in their life. I mean, even before the children start talking, do you notice they start responding to their parents? They start smiling at their parent. They start recognizing the voice of their parent. I believe God designed it that way because there is a critical role He wants parents to play. So what I'm saying is this: every other segment of society that contributes in the upbringing of our children are only secondary. The primary place where parenting is being done is in the family. In recent time, there was a discussion between me, my wife, and some family friend about the issue of sending your wards to boarding house. And one of the reasons why I told them I don't want to send my children to boarding house is that in a present today society, you just have a maximum of 18 years to spend with your children. That is, even if you get to that point. Because they do first 6 years in their primary school, they do 6 years in their secondary school, that's 12 years. Now, if you send them out at that age and they spend majority of their time outside your purview, how would you observe them? How will you monitor them? What time do you have to communicate? Because these days, once the kids go to university, majority of them don't like going back home after university education. In fact, I remember that when I was leaving, I remember telling my father that, for me, this is just the first step to departure. And guess what? After my university, I never went back to live with my parents. So now, if we send our children to boarding school in primary school, we send our children to boarding school in secondary school, all because we want to be busy to achieve our personal aspiration. And I don't want to speak like as if I don't understand the place of, the realities of today's society. People want to achieve more. People want to become more. People want to, do more. As good as those things are, we must understand that when you don't do the job of parenting, you are simply gathering whatever you're going to get, whether it is a good name, whether it is estate, whether it is money, company and business, whatever it is, for children who will have prodigal nature.
Okay.
And I tell myself that the word prodigal is not a name, it's a nature. What do I mean by prodigal? Children who are not properly brought up, who don't have the right value that can help them to mix up with society.
Okay, now you've talked about the fact that you've made a decision not to send your children to a boarding school. And presently children are on vacation, like they're on a midterm break, not midterm break, the long-term break.
Yes.
And a lot of parents, I think this is for them, a time for them to bond with their children. But for some who are working, it's actually the normal routine. The only difference now is the children get to stay at home. And some have decided to take these children outside for lesson, even rather than have them stay at home when they are not around because they have to go to work. They have to still take the children back, look for lessons here and there. Okay, now we know all this. Do you think that this is the period when this parent, the parent and the children, needs to actually come together and the parents get to know what this child is doing? Because the truth is, a lot of parents will tell you they don't have time. This is the time I'm still working. It's not as if they give me break. Like for us who are in this kind of job, we come to work Saturday, Sunday. Throughout the week, maybe you have one day off, or you work, or maybe if you work in the evening, in the morning, your children are at school, so there's no time for you to bond with them. And in the evening, while they are back from school, you're at work. So what would you say about this period? Do you think, what do you think the parents need to do using this vacation, during this vacation, in order to like get to know their children?
All right. For parents who have peculiar work like yours, of course, I'm talking to those ones because they have genuine reasons. But there are parents who I know that their challenge is not having a peculiar work. Their challenge is not recognizing the responsibility that has been given to them and the importance of that responsibility as long as family, society is concerned. For instance, if you go through the city in the evening, you see social joints, isn't it? Are you aware that those people who sit there till late night are parents? For instance,
so are you trying to say they shouldn't go out?
Let me make my point. Just give me some time. Let me take my picture so you can know where I'm going to. For instance, for an average trader, the market we are aware closes by 6, isn't it? Now between 6 and 9, that's 3 hours every day. You know what it means that you put in 3 hours to your children every day of the week. Now, for those who are busy, you must recognize that your being busy is not an excuse. It will never replace the role you're supposed to play as a parent. So what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to deliberately plan times to spend with your children. And you're supposed to sit down, discuss with your wife or your husband, and think out modalities, strategies you can use to still play the role of parenting. I'll give you an instance. I'm a preacher, and it's been said that preachers' children usually end up they don't usually end well. So having heard that information, I asked myself, do I want my children to end well? I said no. I want them to read the Bible as early as enough, because the knowledge will definitely give me the opportunity to engage them in discussion about the Bible. So what did I do? I came up with the strategy to say, okay, as a child, if you finish a book of the Bible, you have a gift. So without me being there, you need to see these children reading their Bible on their own. In fact, we were talking about the verse we read in our family prayer time yesterday, and my children practically were taking me to Revelation to make reference to things they read. Now, I'm not saying everybody should adopt my strategy, but I'm just giving that as an illustration to let you know that as a parent, if you are busy, because you understand that you need to still do your job of parenting, you need to devise time. Now, I was also talking with a family friend who traveled abroad recently, and he told me that they had to plan their work schedule. Do you know why? Because there is not optional for you to do the job of parenting. Between the age bracket of your children, there is a law that says you can't leave those children at home. Once you don't have any of your child that is up to, I think, 12 years, at every given point in time, one of the parents must be at home. Now, so you see that people are making deliberate effort to ensure they parent. Now, let me say this thing again. Now, we must also understand that life has stages. For instance, as a young parent, you don't want to do what people who their children are now in university are doing, because they have done the work of parenting. We must recognize as parents we won't be with these children forever. So there is a time frame where we are supposed to do that job. Now, when they graduate, leave university, or when they become settled on their own family, I believe we'll have more time to, pursue ambition, to pursue things, to enjoy life. I don't know if you're getting me. Not you have children who are still very young, and you're leaving them with caregivers, and this caregiver will only relate with them as caregiver and transfer whatever is their knowledge to these children. So what I'm saying is that I would advise that as parents, at the initial time, the both parents should not be extremely busy. One person should be less busy, so that there could be one of the parents always around to ensure that the family value, what both of you share as value as parents, is inculcated. And when you talk about parent, it's not just about instruction. It's about being around the environment of these children, allowing them to become unconscious of your presence and let them be in their natural state so you can see what they can do. Sometimes I sit among my children and they're doing things that I know I'm not happy with, but I just allow them to go ahead and finish whatever they're doing so that I can see what it is that they're actually doing. Parenting is an active job, and it cannot be given to anybody. God did not design it that way. And I don't think society expects us to leave the role of parenting to caregivers to do for us.
Okay, quickly, because we started off a little bit late, but let's see if we can address some of the issues. Feel free to ask your questions. 0705 079 109. Back to you, Busol. So, what are the signs to look out for if a parent suspect that the child is abusing drugs? I'm going to ask you two in one question. And what can this parent do if he or she discovers that this child is experimenting with drugs? So the first question is the signs to look out for you to say, okay, something is actually wrong with this child. And if that child eventually is abusing drugs, what should the parents do?
Okay, but first let's say that, just like the Reverend has said, drug abuse prevention and its the impact that parenting has. We want to emphasize that parents have to see this as a responsibility, because whatever they do, their children are most likely to do the same. Two is the fact that parents needs to begin to lead by example. We went out for a campaign once, and a question was asked to us that the woman was talking, and she said that she has seen young children come to buy cigarettes from her shop. Now, that is what we find in our society. The impact of this is that the more you involve your child in and expose your child to drugs, whether it is alcohol, whether it is tobacco, the more you are putting that child at risk. Now, back to your question. What are the signs that shows that a young person may be experimenting with drugs? When a young person begins to experiment with drugs, one of the foremost signs you will see is a change in that person's attitude. A child who was not aggressive before is most likely to become aggressive when he begins to experiment with drug abuse. The second sign that is obvious is the fact that that child begins to make unnecessary demands for money, because there are no free drugs anywhere, even in Nigeria. For you to be able to abuse drugs, you need to have access to money. So when a child begins to demand for money and cannot account for what that money is being used for, then there is a need to worry. The third thing is the fact that that child begins to suffer in his academics. When a young person begins to abuse drugs, it will definitely show off in that person's academics. And so once a child begins to show some of these signs, it is important that their parents begin to investigate. You would also see that one of the signs we always advise parents to look out for is when the child begins to withdraw. Now, whether it is drug abuse or any other vice, if a child begins to engage in vices, one of the things that you will notice is that that child is going to begin to withdraw to him or herself. What can parents do when they notice that their children are beginning to experiment with drugs? Before I dive into that, I want to also say that if parents don't get involved in drug abuse prevention, it will be difficult for them to have the accurate information to be able to help their children. So what do? First, get involved, acquire knowledge. The second is that when you notice the signs we have listed above, and you notice these signs in your child, don't confront that child in the open. If you do, the child is most likely to deny and shoot him or herself into secrecy. So you talk to that child in private and let the child know what you have found out. And if it is true, you have to assure that child of your support throughout the healing process. The third thing you need to do is to seek professional help. And I need to stress this again. Now, when a child begins to experiment with drugs, at that stage of experimentation, the child can, it is very possible that that child is made to withdraw. If he becomes addicted, it's going to take a longer process. I have met with the medical professionals who have said that it takes about 6 months to 1 year to get someone to recover from drug abuse prevention. And that is why once you notice that a child is experimenting with drugs, seek professional help so that they will ascertain if addiction has set in. You will also need to change environment. For instance, if a child began to experiment with drugs because of the kind of friends that that child had in school, it is only reasonable that you consider the option of changing that child from that school and putting the child in another school so that the process of healing can begin.
And let me also say, as part of the sign, the language of the child will change. So parents should also watch out for their children's language, because the moment they begin to relate with drug abusers, they usually develop language to communicate, so that the person not involved will not know when they are making communication.
Okay, so on the final notes for you, Reverend Levi, what will be your advice to parents as we speak? Because we have a lot of them listening. So what will be your major advice for them?
My advice to parents is that they should know that the subject of drug abuse is capable of making a waste all their efforts that they've made on that child. Drug abuse can so destabilize a child, not just psychologically, it can destabilize a child spiritually, it can destabilize a child academically, it can destabilize a child financially. I mean, think about the massive effect this can have. So what I would advise parents to know is that, in as much I want to sympathize that parenting is pretty difficult, especially in our time, pressures of school fees, house rent, today reality, they should not sacrifice the time they spend and therefore they put as parents with their children for any other thing. It may not pay off at the beginning, but if they put in that time, I can bet you that those children are capable of growing up and helping them to achieve those things they sacrifice to parent, rather than going after those things, achieving them, and losing the children and making a mess of all that they've been able to acquire. A drug abused child can sell off an asset that take the parent a lifetime to get.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And finally, from Busoso, your advice and where parents listening to us this evening can find more information about drug abuse. If you can also share that information with our listeners.
Okay, so my advice will be this: parents, start talking and listening to your children when it comes to drug abuse before someone else does. There are different alternatives that are out there that are seeking for the attention of your children. So parents should start talking about drug abuse, and you cannot begin to talk about what you don't know. And that is why for us at Busoso Foundation, we have developed and published a drug abuse prevention manual booklet for parents and teachers. This booklet is free of charge. We have printed copies and we have electronic copies. And so if you need to get this booklet, just go to our website at www.busofoundation.org/trainers booklet. I would like to spell Busoso again. Busoso is spelled BUSAOSOWO. Now, children are on vacation. Mkpulumiri is on our street as we speak right now. I was so surprised that, like I shared in our last episode, in our child layout, in one day you will find instances of young people running mad because of Mkpulumiri. Mkpulumiri looks like ice. Parents, talk to your children. Now that everyone has come back home, those who are boarding, those who are not boarding, everybody is back home. They should not get things from people that they don't trust. And two is that parents, please watch the friends that your children keep, and don't be scared to challenge and confront them when you are not comfortable with the association that they keep.
And for those who also know me, if you can reach out to me if you need those manuals, we can help you get across to Busoso Foundation and see how we can make that manual available to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, everyone that has been listening to this program. So sorry that we're not able to take calls, and that's why we did say that you can send your messages, your WhatsApp message, your questions actually via WhatsApp. It will aid the discussion. Just feel free, okay? Maybe at the end of September, we'll be able to take questions from as many persons as possible. I want to sincerely appreciate our guest today, Reverend Levi Chukwuneye. Thank you so much for being part of the program today. And of course, Busoso, thank you so much for also bringing this wonderful information to our listener. Remember, this program comes up every last Saturday of the month. So in the month of September, the last Saturday, do join us on The Truth About Drug Abuse. And the last Saturday will be on the 24th of September 2022. Until then, my name is Lillian Esinwa, and thanks to our photographer. Your name, please. Let's appreciate it. Double T.
Noble TG.
Noble T. Okay, thanks to our photographer and video camera, everything, everybody, everything. Thanks to you and to everyone who did listen. Thank you so much as well for listening, and do have a wonderful and blessed day.